Welcome to the Power of One. Today I'm going to be speaking with Robin Johnson, who is a spiritual life coach and author. We're going to touch on triggers today and beliefs. So we're going to tackle these two to see how we can help some people get through some rough times and then be born into the new, beautiful you. Welcome to the show, Robin.
I'm glad to be here, Melany.
Robin, let's start out by first giving your contact information, how people can get in touch with you, because you're an amazing life coach, and if they want to begin taking sessions with you. So we're going to do that in the beginning, and we're going to do that in the end.
Okay, so you can reach me at Robin Johnson at eta2oneness.com. That's E as Edward, T, Tom, A, Apple, the number 2, ONENESS.com, eta2oneness.com. And so you can reach me through email. You can give me a telephone call. All the links and all the information are on the website, eta2oneness.com.
Sounds good. Now let's dive right in. Let's speak about beliefs and then let's speak about triggers. So when we're born and we're groomed by our beautiful parents, or some may not have great experiences, those beliefs are embedded in us. When we get older, there are triggers. So let's speak about beliefs, and then as we go through life, those triggers and how they can bring us back to our embedded beliefs.
Well, you have just described the process. All of
I'm
us.
good, because I didn't know I was. See,
you did.
I'm just smart.
Very smart. So all of us are programmed basically by our environments when we're growing up. So it's not only parents, it's teachers, it's work environments, it's school, it's culture, it's church, you name it, you name anything you were exposed to as a young person that has had some impact on what you believe. The problem is you don't remember that. And most of the beliefs that we need to fix or change are the beliefs that come out of trauma, either big T trauma, sexual assaults, abuse, neglect, abandonment, or little T trauma. When you don't get your birthday cake and you thought you were going to, you don't get the toy you wanted, whatever it is, we have a story or a meaning. We assign a meaning to all experiences that have had a negative impact on us. And those are the things that become our beliefs. For instance, I didn't get a party when I was 5. My older sister got a party. That made me say, I don't matter. That became the fundamental belief. So every time I didn't get something I wanted, I don't matter, I don't matter, I don't matter. And that kept getting ingrained. So now I'm an adult and I'm doing things and I'm interacting, but I'm being passed over for promotions because I don't matter. I'm being left out of parties because I don't matter. Whatever it is that's happening, the fundamental belief is I don't matter. So I've taken that fundamental belief right up into adulthood. And now the difference is when something happens and I'm left out or I'm passed over for promotion, now I'm mad. That's the trigger. The trigger is having a negative reaction to something and you're very intense, and the intensity of your reaction is not quite appropriate for the situation.
Okay.
The intensity of your reaction is not quite appropriate for the situation, which means there is other energy that is pushing out of you emotionally. So somebody says, take a left, and you're driving, and then you take a left. And then they say, oh, no, that was wrong. Take a right. Okay, but no, take a left. What do you want? Make up your mind. Now you're hollering at them. didn't call for all of that. But why are
Mm-hmm.
you hollering at somebody who's mixing up their directions?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe one of your fundamental beliefs is if I get it wrong, I'm punished.
Mm.
Therefore, you can't keep telling me to do the wrong thing because it's stressing me. Because fundamentally, I believe I'm going to be punished for making mistakes.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Keep in mind, we don't know we believe these things. We only see the beliefs as we're reacting to things. So, the best thing to do if you really want to move yourself into this new way of being where you're kind of on the chill side and you kind of let things roll and you're kind of going with the flow and you're opening up who you really are to be who you really need to be, your most magnificent self. Part of getting there is to continue to pay attention to the parts of yourself you're hiding by your anger, your frustration, your unhappiness. They're parts of ourselves we're hiding. I call it the sugary insincerity. The people that stay up all the time, and that's not really true, they're
Mm-hmm.
hiding who they really are. We need to be authentic. We've got to start being who we are so that we can correct those things that are no longer who we truly are.
Mm.
Things that were programmed into us that weren't ours from the beginning.
I've often said to myself, if you get into a disagreement with some people, sometimes some of what they're speaking about does not make sense. But like you said, it's that trigger. So sometimes you have to read in between the lines because something else is going on there that could have triggered them, but it just did not. It sometimes it does not make sense to me. And I listen to people because I work with victims and co-homicide survivors and witnesses. So, and there's often times when I need to really listen to what their need is. So, and that goes from so it goes beyond that. So sometimes I'm listening to things and those triggers, tracking those triggers. I'm gonna speak about something and then we'll anchor in new beliefs. How do you overcome those traumatic incidents that have occurred in your life? And then those triggers come up. You know what I'm saying? These things that may come up. So my oldest baby, my baby, will be 30 on Saturday, June 15th. My son has been through some things. He was bullied in school. And in his 12th grade year, my oldest baby, he was bullied. Not only was he bullied, he was jumped twice going to and from school. Good kid. But it was just these kids, just dumb stuff. One guy just started hitting him. And he said, I don't even know you. That hurt my heart as a mom. He called his dad, my husband, and my dad, his dad, he was trying to get to him. Thank goodness he didn't tell him who they were because that would have been horrible. But that's not what I was going to say. So I altered my work schedule and I was picking my son up because I didn't want him to have to walk to and from school. He was in 12th grade. And my son got hit by a car. A school bus drove by and I hear like a boof. And I'm on a phone with my dad. I'm talking to my dad. And I happen to look over because I see my son coming out of the school. But I happen to look over and I don't see my son standing up anymore. And I'm like, where did he go? And I'm like, and I'm on the phone with my dad. I'm like, and then I see my son laying on the ground.
Oh, no.
And just to tell you what type of person my son is, my son gets up. He's holding his side and he's apologizing to the driver. And I was
Oh.
like, son, it's not your fault. It's not your fault. Like, sit down. Now, the 12th graders that were coming out of the school was laughing at my son. The football players was laughing at my son. And here I am like yelling at kids. And I'm like, is this what you're being taught in this school? Like, it's disgusting. Said all that to say, to this day, I'm still traumatized. And like my son is a grown man, like he's a master mason, he's a Muslim, but like when he's going to the lodge on Broad Street, the emotions and the thoughts, all I'm thinking about is Broad Street. You see all these hit and runs on the news, and I'm like, son, listen, I need you to park on this side of the street.
Yeah.
What is that? And how can I get rid of that trigger? Like, you know what I'm saying? Tell me how can I get rid of that trigger?
All right. I need to coach you. So let me tell you, there is a science, and the science is called neuroplasticity. Neuroplasticity, which means that the brain can continue to grow and shape and change. What happens is that when we have trauma, it's like a groove, which means it's like a road. It's like Market Street. It's a place you go up and down and up and down and up and down. And let's say you're downtown Philly and you want to go out to Mount Airy. So instead of going over Market, now you're going to run over Broad, and you're up and down and up and down. And that's the groove. Mm-hmm. Something happens on Market. You had a trauma on Market.
Mm-hmm.
And now you're like, every time you go on Market, you're feeling this. At some point, you have to stop, and you've got to allow yourself to truly feel the emotion of the trauma. And while you're feeling the emotion of the trauma, you must express what you don't want or no longer tolerate within the emotion of the trauma. And then you have to reparent yourself. It's okay. It wasn't your fault. Just like you told your son, somebody needs to tell you that. It wasn't your fault. You were picking him up. So energy is getting stuck. And when the energy gets stuck, every time you go on Broad Street, you're like, ah. But when you release the emotion from the trauma, Broad Street disappears. And now if you want to catch me or Melany coming from downtown Philly, you need to take the drive. You need to take Lincoln Drive out. West River Drive, Lincoln Drive, because you won't find me on Broad Street, because Broad Street no longer exists in the brain. What happens is that trauma is still in a groove in the brain, and it's anchored there by emotion. So once you can deal with the emotion of it and release it, all kind of mechanisms, what I've described is a form of narrative therapy, and you have to release it, reframe it, reparent yourself around it, and then it releases that connection. And then it forms a different connection, because in that expression of it, this is not right, it's not fair, I'm not tolerating this, whatever you're saying, however you're going on and on, the brain is now taking that on. Why? Because the brain doesn't know whether it's live or Memorex. When you go into a trauma, the brain thinks it's now. And so when you give it a different ending, and when you say and express what you didn't say or express at that point in time, then you have a different ending. So now you have a different connectivity in the brain. So you don't walk around on Broad Street saying, oh my God, because you don't even have a thought about Broad Street anymore.
Does that form a new belief?
Yes, it does. Because you're putting the belief in while you're working through the reaction. You're having some reaction to Broad Street. You have something that you did or didn't say, some way you're feeling. Most of the time, our beliefs, the ones we don't like, they're often anchored by anger, guilt, or shame. So there's something in there. So in your instance, it may be a combination of anger, but also guilt. Why guilt for you? What did you do or not do? Right. Maybe you going to get him set that up. In your subconscious, you may believe you're responsible, but you're mad with the kids for the way they reacted. But the intensity of the anger covers or blocks your ability to feel what you're really feeling about the whole thing. And until you can access the emotion that's kind of blocked, that you're projecting out, when you uncover that, you're right, they shouldn't have done that. Well, what else was going on? What was I feeling? What am I really mad about? That's the question to ask yourself when you're triggered around something. What am I really mad about? And where did this happen before? The problem is we sit on things and we resolve most of what is going on in the moment, but life keeps moving. So I call it residual emotion. Well, it keeps accumulating around certain things. So if your son was bullied and he's bullied all through time, now you are having an explosion of emotion
Mm.
in that moment, but it didn't resolve all the other bullying that went on. It's just a volcano blowing, but nothing got resolved in the other situations. It might have got a little resolved in that one, but there's some other things that didn't get resolved.
Explosion of emotions is powerful because I can't speak for anybody else, but for me, like I have stuff that stacks on. I'm stacking it. I'm stacking it because, like you said, the world has to turn. I still have to do what I have to do. And see, I'm the youngest, but the oldest in my family of my mommy, my daddy, my siblings. So then I have my two children, I have my grandchildren, I have my husband. So listen, I am that one. I am the rock. So I'm going to make sure everything is good. I'm going to make sure everybody is good. So then I got the stuff stacking. And of course, my job, where I'm dealing with victims and co-homicide survivors and witnesses every day. And then, of course, I got to deal with some things where I may be sitting in a room where I am the only African American woman or person sitting in a room, and then I have my other counterparts who are looking at me like I'm less than, or you know what I'm saying. So I'm dealing with this stuff often at in the line of work that I'm in. So again, I'm stacking, I'm stacking, I'm stacking.
So here's the good news. Here's the good news. As you take time to deal with the things that trigger you, and you start to unstack the residual emotion, what starts to surface are the new beliefs around the true essence of who you are. You're now in this other kind of alignment. You're in this new way of being where it doesn't matter what everybody is saying and doing around you. You are operating completely from the center out. You always know what to say. You always know what to do. You almost feel like something is moving you and guiding you.
Mhm,
You now
mhm,
operate from the synchronicity. You get a message, call this person. You get a message, do that. And when you do in that moment, it connects and it works. That's
mhm,
what happens when you can begin to release the old emotion and the old beliefs. It allows for this new energy to come in, this higher self, this divine self, this other way of operating. And now you can move in the world anchored and secured.
mm,
Doesn't matter what goes on outside
right.
because you're always being guided. It's almost like you've got like a protection around you, but now your beliefs are different. The way you see reality is different. The way you see conflict, the way you see all the negative things that are happening. Everybody's out here on a journey. Many of us
Mhm,
have to have our experiences with the journey because we're getting both sides of issues. We know what it's like to be the victim. We know what it's like to be the victimizer. We're all the only way we can get our sense of compassion is to know all sides of things. So some of the chaos that's going on in the world right now, it's allowing each of us to develop a different kind of compassion for ourselves and for others, a different kind of love for ourselves and for others. But we can't experience that and live in that new way of being until we deal with our own emotions, which are triggered by the differences. That's why my program is called ETA to Oneness. What is your estimated time of arrival? ETA to Oneness. We now need to start moving in a new direction, each and every one of us.
How does one go from changing their mindset and their thoughts who is always negative? And this is probably something of like how they grew up. I can imagine that's a hard task. And it takes a little while to shift to start, like you said, looking on the positive side
It's
of
it's real. It's not even just being positive. There's a payoff that we get for being like we are. So the person that is negative is getting a payoff for being negative. It could be attention. It could be
Mm-hmm.
the
Mm-hmm.
conflict that they thrive on. It could be any
Mm-hmm.
number of things. But if that person gets to a point where they don't like the reactions that they're getting from other people, now they are primed to make a change, to make a mind shift change. Because now they can become more aware of what they're doing that will allow them to see how they're triggering other people. Because we trigger other people as much as other people trigger us. And the question
Mm.
is why? I call it throwing out the boomerang. We throw out a boomerang, we say something smart or snarky. Somebody reacts and we act like, oh my God, why are you talking to me like that?
Right.
We don't even see what we did to set the person off in the first place. So the change that we're talking about comes from people wanting to change. And there are a lot of people out here right now who do not want to change. They like the way they're living. They like the chaos. They like the conflict. I'm not one of them, but I've had to learn to embrace it. And this
Mm.
is what I learned is different. I just wanted peace and harmony. And
Mm-hmm.
peace is just the total absence of conflict. I have an older sister whose main philosophy is conflict creates progress. And so where did that leave me? It pushed me into oneness. And in oneness, it's not peace where there's an absence of conflict. Oneness is the acceptance of the differences.
Mm.
We've got to give people more room to be who they are and how they are
Mm-hmm.
within bounds. Now, if you're going to go be lawless, well, we got a rule for that. But we've got
Right.
to
Right.
give people more room to be who they are and how they are. And in doing that, it now allows each and every one of us to be who we are and who we need to be. I spent all
Mm-hmm.
my time trying to tell my mother and sister how to be so I could be at peace. I'm not
Mm-hmm.
doing that. I don't care what you say. So then I'm like, okay, that didn't work. So I
Right.
kept having to change my fundamental beliefs around myself, what I value, and how I see reality. And I had to make allowances. I had to make room for people who see life differently than me. And what
Mm-hmm.
it meant is rather than telling you to stop saying that, I just tell you when you start going there, I'll be back. I got something else to do. We don't have to engage. We don't have to make people different. We try to make people different because that's what works for us.
Right. Right.
We're not giving people space and room to be who they are and let, birds of a feather flock together. Let them get with their own people while I go
Mm-hmm.
get with my
Mm-hmm.
own people.
Right. Right. Right.
But we've got to stop trying to limit one another because we see things differently. And that's a big problem in America right now. Because people see things differently, the people on the right want to limit everybody else. Your right to choose, your
Mm-hmm.
right to vote, your right to live
Mm-hmm.
where you want to live, your right to learn what you want to learn. I'm going to limit that because you don't believe what I believe.
Right.
That is a recipe for disaster. It is not sustainable to try to crush, kill, dominate, control people just because they're different. That system, that way of being, is what is no longer working and what is yielding to a new way of being where people are free to be who they need to be within bounds. But once you're in touch with yourself, you're not trying to hurt somebody else.
Right.
You're only doing that because you feel constrained. You feel somehow that you're feeling like you need to break out of something or break through something. But if you're free to be, let me go be free to be. I'm not trying to hurt
Mm-hmm.
somebody.
Mm-hmm. Well, I thank you so much for joining me today. And please give the viewers your contact information once again.
All right. My name is Robin Johnson, and you can reach me at www.eta2oneness.com. You can also reach me through email or telephone. Again, www.eta, the number two, oneness.com. I do coaching and I also run programs. You can sign up for any number of services to kind of support you on your journey.
Thank you so much for joining me today, Robin.
It was a pleasure.
Thank you so much for joining us, and I hope you learned a lot. It is okay to be you, but be you in a positive light. And if you have those around you who are negative, you may have to learn how to love them from afar. Still love them, but do not let them impact your positivity. Peace and love.